Thank you. All right, friends, welcome. Let me pull up my notes here so I say the right thing. Um, Welcome to our Lausanne Movement webinar, Lens to Action, Mobilizing Digital Storytelling. My name is Amy, and I serve the Lausanne Movement as the team leader of WildGen Equip. I will be facilitating our webinar today. This webinar is part of an initiative called the Younger Leaders Generation, or WildGen. One part of Lausanne's vision is to see Christ-like leaders raised up in every nation and every church. WildGen is a 10-year commitment from Lausanne to invest in nearly 800 key emerging leaders from nearly 140 countries. It's our hope that missional resources like this webinar will inspire, empower, and equip younger leaders around the world to better live and lead like Jesus. Now, it's my privilege to introduce our speaker. Matt Brandon is a documentary photographer, filmmaker, and trainer, serving as the director of the visual story team at VIA. He equips Christians across Africa, Asia, and South America to use photography and video as tools for ministry and global evangelism. For over more than 30 years, Matt has lived and worked extensively throughout Asia, training local believers in visual storytelling and documenting cultures and communities. Matt, thank you for being here with us today. Thank you for giving of your time. Would you open us in prayer? And then if there's anything else you want us to know about yourself, share with us, and then the rest of the time is yours.
All right, let's do it. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, thank you so much for this opportunity to be able to look both at the world, at the way that you have made us, the way that you have created us, and the way that we communicate, and all really for the end of seeing the task of global evangelism finished. And we have so much to be excited about, where we've been, where we're going, and how we're going to get there. And so, Lord, meet us today as we talk about how we're going to get there. And we ask this in your name. Amen. All right. Well, my name is Matt Brandon, and I'm going to go ahead and right from the start, I'm going to start sharing my screen, and I am, Amy, you can remind me later. I'm going to turn off my camera because the battery's kind of low on it, and I'll turn it back on once we get started. Once we stop. So let me share my screen here. All right. Everybody see that? Everybody can see the screen okay?
Yes, I think.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So, welcome to Lens to Action. The idea is to use visual storytelling to inspire cross-cultural missions. This webinar is really designed to equip you as young leaders in missions around the world to use photography and video as a powerful tool for ministry. This is normally a 3-day course, and it's a very hands-on, practical course. And
you find out.
Excuse me?
It's okay. You can go. You can keep going.
What happened?
Just somebody was unmuted.
Oh, okay. Anyway, it's like I said, it's normally a 3-day course, and it's packed full of practical stuff and getting out and shooting and things like that. But this today is just going to be a real taste of it in a 90-minute webinar. Now, it might go a little long. If you have to leave, that's fine. But I've got permission from the boss here, Amy, to maybe go a tad longer if I need to. So you'll get some serious pointers on how to help you communicate better, how to tell stories about what God's doing in your community, and really in hopes to help you mobilize and to share stories of what is on your heart and what God's doing in the global church, and inspire others to step into the harvest. And so at the core, our heart is simple. It's to see the gospel shared more effectively and to really move the mission of global evangelism forward through the power of visual storytelling. Now, my name is Matt Brandon, as I was introduced, and this is my wife, Alou. We were married in 1992, After we got married, we moved to India, where we spent 13 years in India as church planters among a shepherd people there called the Gujar people. We were blessed to later be a part of a church planting movement that happened among the Kashmiris up in Kashmir. That's a whole nother story, a whole nother time to talk about that. But after 13 years in India, we moved to Malaysia, where we continued working as coaches for church planters in the region. And all throughout these years, I've worked as a freelance photographer, sort of as a side gig. I've shot for National Geographic Traveler. I have done many issues with them, shooting supplements and entire issues. This was the issue on Qinghai, China, that I shot for them back in May of or March of 2018. I also lead photo workshops. I've been doing that for over 18 years, teaching students how to take photos. But it's more than just teaching someone how to take a photo. And that's what I want to talk about today. And so this is a good way to lead into it. What we teach is really how to shape the story, the angle, the light, how to use the background, how to use the context, all of it. Nothing's accidental. The idea is to teach photographers and others that aren't photographers, people like you, how to use the tools that you have in your hand, such as your iPhone, your Android phone, your DSLR, your mirrorless camera, whatever you have, how to use it with intention so that your images speak with clarity and power. And that's kind of where we're leading into today. So really, what's the point of this workshop? Well, to answer this, we need to really think first about it's two-pronged. All right. The first being, and this is where you guys know all this. All right. There are 3 billion people still that have no access to the gospel. Okay. That's 3 billion people. When you're 90 years old, you haven't even lived 1 billion seconds. So that's a lot of people, right? And the reality is that we are going to need to access, we are going to need to mobilize the whole church. And when we say the whole church, it isn't just the church from the West anymore. It's not the West to the rest. This is the whole church. And this is what Luzon is about. This is what you already know. That's why I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. But who are we recruiting? Well, the reality is that the current generation, if you will, the Gen Z, make up 30% of the world's population and is expected to account for 27% of the workforce by the end of this year. And it's been said that they're the most recruitable, trainable, and sendable people in the world. Okay, if that's the case, and I believe it is, then we need to ask ourselves, how are the Gen Z mobilized? If we look at the top 3 social media platforms that Gen Z use, and by the way, the reason I jumped right into social media is one of the biggest complaints that people have about the Generation Z is that they're always on their phone, right? It's like, you can't talk to a Gen Z without having them, have their phone in their face and everything. Well, our job as mobilizers isn't to retrain a Gen Z to not be on their phone all the time. Our job is to meet them where they are. And if they're on their phone, then we need to figure out what it is that they're looking at. And so if we look at the top 3 social media platforms among Gen Z, I could probably ask, is there a possible way to get people to answer questions here, Amy?
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys want to unmute. Yeah.
In fact, you guys could just unmute and mute back, and shout out an answer. What do you think the top 3 platforms are among Gen Z?
Instagram, Snapchat.
Okay. I get Snapchat a lot. But Instagram, any other one? It's not Snapchat. Instagram. What else?
It's Facebook.
TikTok.
It's Facebook. Facebook doesn't even show up among Gen Z. They don't, globally, there are places where it does, but generally globally, Facebook isn't even on a Gen Z's phone.
YouTube.
Something. What?
YouTube.
Yes, that's right. YouTube. Okay. And come on, you guys haven't said the big one.
TikTok.
Yeah,
Yes,
Yeah.
TikTok. There you go. And you already said Instagram. All right. Now, let me ask you another question while your mics are unmuted. What do these sites have in common?
They use videos.
Exactly. They use short form video. And well, YouTube doesn't use short form. It can use short form or long form. But yes, they all use visuals. That's exactly right. And the reality is, if you poll Gen Zs, they say that they get their news now not from established news sources, but from TikTok or from Instagram. That's where they're getting their news. That's what's motivating them. If you're trying to attract a large block, an audience by using a large block of text, they're just going to scroll right past that. When engaging this audience, it's worth to invest in quality visuals and content that boils down to the really essentials of what we're going to talk about today. And that is, a good story has to be a part of it, because these, not only is it visuals, but it's visuals that tell a story. A good story doesn't push. A good story takes your hand and leads you. Okay. And that's exactly what mobilization is. Now, let's say we're talking about Hinduism. Okay. I could throw up a stat like this. This is a nice, clean slide. All right. You probably have used slides like this when you've talked about Hinduism or other world religions. Could throw it up there, and I could read this. A vast pluralistic tradition rooted in India, Hinduism is a complex tapestry of philosophy, ritual, and mythology centered on concepts like dharma and karma and the moksha, expressed through countless deities, practices, and paths to the divine. That's yeah, you're not going to remember that. Okay, you won't remember it. But if I show you a picture like this, and I say that Hinduism is expressed through countless deities, practices, and paths to the divine, you're much more likely to remember, especially if you're not from India and you're not used to seeing someone actually praying to a idol, a real honest to goodness marble idol. Okay. People in the West, people in maybe in other places. Now, I know that there are idols throughout all of Asia and even much of Africa. And so this is maybe not the best example for you, but for people in the West, this brings home this idea and it anchors it into their psyche. Now, we're gonna experience why that is in a minute. So digital storytelling is a useful multimedia tool to bring narratives to life. It uses digital tools like photos and video, audio, graphics, and text to craft and share a narrative. Now, don't think of videos or digital storytelling as only videos. It's not. Now, we do think of it most time when we talk about visual storytelling or digital storytelling, we think of short form videos from like 90 seconds to 4 minutes. But it can be other digital as well. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to look at storytelling, and we're going to look at the digital aspect of this. So here's the roadmap. All right. We're going to answer the questions of what is digital storytelling? Excuse me. What is digital storytelling? Why does it matter, especially in missions? What makes for a good story? How do we tell a better story visually or otherwise? And then how can we use this right now for the kingdom? Okay. And we're going to look at specifically the details of composition and visual weight when it comes to visual. So we're going to go from the theoretical to the practical, all in now less than 90 minutes. All right. Now, there are all kinds of ways in which we use digital storytelling. We use it in social media posts. We use it in presentations like the one you're seeing today. We use it in infographics. We use it in newsletters and web, and more things are coming up every day that we're using digital storytelling in. But today, we're not going to look into details onto like presentations and infographics. I could do that, and it would be fun, but really, we're just going to look at how photography and video plays into all of them, because the reality is all of these have one thing in common: A, they're digital, and B, they don't work without visuals. So that's your concept of visual storytelling. All right, now let's just jump in right in now into stories. Now, I was talking with Amy beforehand about Lausanne, and particularly the young leaders. And I asked, how much information do you know about stories? And she was saying that you guys are pretty wired for stories. Pardon the pun there, because I just pulled up a wired slide, but that you guys have a good experience with stories. And so I'm going to go over this fairly quick so that we can get into the more practical aspect of things. But I think this is too cool, and it's so interesting. So I want to spend some time on it. So God has literally hardwired the human body for stories. And I'm not joking. I mean, it is literally, we have been hardwired for stories. And there's a reason that he's done this. And I'll explain it after I explain to you how he's wired us in. All right. So I'm sure that you all have seen these before. We've got cortisol, oxytocin, endorphins, and dopamine. Okay. These are like hormones that are released in the Bible. These are in the body. And I want to go over some examples of how they work and what happens when you are experiencing a good story. So if you take the action story, okay, the action story is it's replete with a sense of risk and adventure and danger and action, of course, and fear. And these are all triggering something called cortisol. Now, cortisol has one thing that it does, and it creates attention. Without this reaction in our brain caused by cortisol, we would lose interest in what's being told. So we've all started a movie where nothing exciting happens, right? And the story loses us. Well, as humans, we crave action, we crave adventure and a sense of risk, whether it's real or perceived, it doesn't really matter. And so when a story has these aspects of adventure or risk, it's going to keep your attention. Okay. It's going to grab people. This is when I tell stories of working in Kashmir, and I talk about how we were shot at times, and we would drive around the corner, and there'd be a car bomb had just gone off a minute earlier. And as I tell these stories and I talk about people we knew that were injured, and one of our dearest friends' daughter grew up with shrapnel in her neck, all from the years spent in Kashmir. People pay attention. All right. Now, what about stories with empathy and bonding? Okay. So if cortisol grabs us and pulls us into story, it won't keep us there for long. It will grab us, but it won't keep us there. So for that, we need to have these aspects of empathy and bonding. And this is where this little guy called oxytocin comes into play. Now, it creates empathy and trust. And stories have a unique ability to build a bond between the storyteller and the audience. And this is something that's called mirroring. And it's a unique phenomenon, and it's fascinating. And I could spend hours talking just about mirroring. But what mirroring is that we start to see ourselves in the story. Studies have shown that listeners experience similar brain activities to each other and to the storyteller. So people have actually had their brains wired. They've listened to a story from a storyteller whose also brain is wired, and their brains reacted differently at the beginning of the story. And by the end, their brains have kind of synced up. It's incredible. It's incredible. So this process, this is a process that is that doesn't happen when reading a fact sheet or a data-laced PowerPoint presentation. It doesn't happen. Oxytocin helps you identify with the protagonist or the hero of the story. This is one of my favorite quotes. It's by a neurologist named Paul Zak. He says, after years of experiments, I now consider oxytocin the neurological substrate for the golden rule. If you treat me well, in most cases, my brain will synthesize oxytocin, and this will motivate me to treat you well in return. That's incredible. You can see how God has literally, he's taken this and plugged this into our very human bodies and made the golden rule a part of not just a quip little saying in the scripture. It is a part of who we are. We are made to live it. And we go against him when we don't, and we go against nature. And then we have this sense of suspense and the unexpected and plot twists. And this happens when this happens, then you get dopamine released. Now, the cool thing here is that it's also released by asking interesting questions. So if you ask someone, hey, do you know why that there are 3 billion people that have no access to the gospel? All of a sudden, people are waiting for an answer. They're interested to know the answer. Okay. If the more you ask questions into your audience, the more you pull them in, and you create focus and memory and motivation. Then lastly, before we get into this other aspect, is endorphins. And endorphins are released with physical laughing. And you might think, oh yeah, well, okay, so what? So I got endorphins. I feel good now. I'm happy. I'm peaceful. I'm feeling good. What does that have to do with a good story? Well, here's the interesting thing: is that studies have shown that a story that has endorphins released connects with the brand, and those endorphins cause feelings that are associated forever with that brand. So as you tell your stories and you tell them about your mission, or about you working in the field, or about just this whole idea of the task remaining, if you can somehow incorporate a little bit of levity in this, a little bit of physical laughing. This isn't just a little ploy that a trick that a preacher might, tell a joke just to start off his thing. The reality is that if you create a good feeling, it's associated with your brand or with you, and that's why you have so many funny commercials, because people want to associate a good feeling with that brand. So storytelling is one of God's greatest gifts to man, and this is how we make sense of the world. We communicate deeper truths and envision things not yet seen. No other creature does this. It's a part of how we bear the image of God. And we know this. We know this because if you look at the content of the Bible, can anybody tell me real quickly what they think the content of roughly the content of narrative passages in the Old Testament is? Anybody?
More than half?
Well, it's roughly half. Yeah, exactly. And the New Testament, it's even more. So, but if we look at the Bible as a whole, you've got prose and discourse is about 20%. You've got poetry is about 33%. But then you look at narrative, and by narrative, I'm talking about not just prose, but stories. And you're talking around 47% of the whole Bible. And if you break that down into the Old and New Testament, then you're talking about 40 to 50% of the Old Testament is narrative, and 60% of the New Testament is narrative. That's incredible. And what that tells you is God understood this because the audience is wired for stories. So what is a story? Well, one of the things that happens to me all the time when I do these workshops is I'll throw a picture out and I'll ask people, can you tell me a story about this picture? And I use them as prompts, right? But the problem, what happens so often is that people start describing the picture. Oh, that's a lady scratching her head, or that's a man standing by a yellow taxi. It must be in India because there's a guy with a turban or whatever, because they look Indian or whatever. Okay, that's not a story. That's a description of something, okay? A story, this is a good definition. A story introduces someone and puts them through a struggle and shows how it all turns out, okay? That's the very shortest definition of a story that I can come up with. That, or just saying a story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that's what a story has. Okay. If your story doesn't have a beginning, a middle, and an end, in other words, if you're describing a picture, it doesn't have a beginning, a middle, of an end. You're just describing something. Okay. It has to introduce something, a character, and then that character needs to struggle, and then everything turns out in the end. Now, it doesn't necessarily turn out good in the end, but it does turn out in the end. So if we were to look at the classic story arc, this is by a guy named Gustav Freytag. It was built off of Aristotle's story arc. We have what we call the exposition, the climax, and the resolve, okay? The exposition is life as it is. This is the way life has all been going on, everything. This is the status quo, okay? This is the status quo. Then you have something happen. This is an incident that happens. That incident changes everything. This is very important. This changes everything. Then you have what you call the rise of action. And that's tension and conflict start to build. There's pitfalls and things that happen. And then you have the climax. And the climax is the most important part. it's the point where all seems lost. It's impossible. The character must decide whether to go for the win or take a graceful failure. It's the turning point of the story where their conflict comes to a head, and it's that everything is gone. Everything is it's the worst it could possibly be. That's the climax. And then you have the falling of action, and that's how things unfold after the climax. Does the hero win or lose? And loose ends are tied up, and then it leads to what is called the denouement, or the resolve. And the resolve is, it's the new normal. It's life will probably never go back to the way it was, but it's the new normal. Okay. And this is the third act, if you will. So let's look at this in scripture, because it's there. We know that God uses story. So does he use this classic story arc? And the answer is absolutely. And he does it on all kinds of levels. Look at the story of Daniel in the lion's den. Okay. We've got Daniel is the right-hand man to the king. This is the way life is going for this particular part of the story. Then Daniel gets tried to trap by the jealous guys. And then the worst part is he gets thrown into the lion's den. All is lost. You don't come out of a lion's den, right? So that's the ultimate end. But then the falling of action is God closes the mouth, and then the resolve is that God is glorified and Daniel prospers. Okay, that's a quick look at Daniel in the lion's den with the story arc. Adam and Eve, same thing. God creates Adam and Eve. This is supposed to be, there's not much time for the exposition here, because this is just, like, who knows how long God had created Adam and Eve before we see the inciting incident, and that is they sin, they eat of the tree. So what was a relationship that was supposed to be open, innocent, and unbroken is now broken, and the servant deceives, and sin enters the world. Then we see the rise of action. They're naked and shamed. They hide from God, and they seek out questions. Or God seeks them out. Where are you? And then we see the blame game started. And then we see the curse, and that's the climax. They're expelled from the garden. It's the irreversible act, the loss of access to God's presence and the tree of life. It's terrible. Then we see the falling of action. And oh, by the way, and in many ways, that climax here, that's the most dramatic beat of the whole story. Then, and the fall of action, they're clothed with animal skins. They're sent out of the garden, and cherub with a flaming sword guards the way back. And then the denouement. Oh, sorry. So anyway, the denouement on that was that they, let's just go back. Oh, now we have to go through all these. Sorry about that. You can edit that out. Okay. So here's the reality is that at the end here, the denouement, God still provides garments are symbolic of foreshadowing of sacrifice, pointing towards the blood as a covering for sin and atonement. So this is super important. That's the reason I wanted to go back, because this is the story that is reflected throughout really the whole Bible. So then if we look at the meta narrative of the Bible, this is the big story of the Bible. We see the overall biblical story arc, okay? And that is creation, is the exposition. This was as man was meant to be. God makes a beautiful order, and humanity is made in the image of God. They're told to multiply, fill the earth. Of course, it doesn't happen. And just as in Adam's story and Eve's story, we see the fall. Now, man rebels, and the mission now is that somehow they have to figure out how to renew that relationship and to fill the earth and to make God's presence known in the world. But it doesn't happen. We have over and over, we see all these terrible things happen all the way up to the climax of Christ being crucified. Now, when Christ is crucified, all seems lost, right? And at least Satan certainly thinks so. The promised one is betrayed, beaten, and crucified. The light of the world is snuffed out. Hope is buried. This is the turning point of history. The full weight of sin is laid on one innocent person, and it's just terrible. Okay, then we have the fall of the action, the falling of action. Death doesn't win. Christ rises from the grave, conquers sins. Spirit is given. New humanity is born. The church, we learn to live as light to the nations. The kingdom of God breaks in even in our weaknesses. And then Christ returns, and then we have glory. And glory ends where it begins. And this is the cool thing. Excuse me. This is the really exciting thing, is that in this scripture, in the meta narrative of scripture, we see that creation now is repeated in a new heaven and a new earth, and God dwells with his people again. Every tribe, tongue, and nation gathers around the throne. And finally, we are fully what we were created to be, image bearers who reflect and rejoice in the glory of God forever. Excuse me. And that is the meta narrative of scripture: creation, fall, redemption, glory. That's it. So what makes a good story good? Well, it's stories have a point of view. Your story needs to have a personal connection, and the story needs to have a point to it. And so your story, whether it's talking about a person or an event or something, whether it's talking about change, there's a point of view to the story, and it needs to have one. You can't just ramble on about anything. Stories have characters that we connect with. We've already talked a little bit about like Daniel in the lion's den. We talked about Jesus. We talked about Joe. Yeah. Anyway, and then stories have to have mystery and curiosity. Stories need to have a setting. A setting anchors the story, especially if it's personal. It helps build relatability. Stories have conflict. A story that has no conflict is boring. It doesn't pull the listener or viewer into the narrative. It's the narrative equivalent of speaking in a monotonic voice. And by the way, conflict doesn't necessarily mean anger or anything. Conflict can actually just mean it can actually be what would the word contrast. And so if in the story or in the visual narrative that you're doing, there is a contrast between what was and what is, inevitably that will come up, and that can actually become conflict. We can talk more about that later. But let's quickly but going back to the conflict thing just real quick, conflict is struggle within the plot. It gives movement and it's a catalyst for compelling the protagonist to take action. Okay. And somehow the world has changed. And so we have to see what's at stake. And so that's what conflict does. So let's, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to go there. Okay. I skipped some slides and then I forgot to get rid of those. All right, so let's start looking now. So that's story as a whole, and now let's try to figure out how do we communicate what a story is. And I know I'm dumping a bunch of stuff on you, right? But what I want to do is I want to talk through how, in the remainder of the time here, how we communicate these stories through visuals. Okay, you found a good story, you've got conflict, you got a good character, you're talking about your ministry, maybe you're the character in it, you've got conflict, maybe it's just support raising, or maybe it's literally people shooting at you, who knows. It's a village that's rioting because you're telling them about Jesus. You have a good story. Now, how do we tell the story visually? Okay. Again, we talked about God wiring us for stories. Well, he's wired us visually specifically. And so if you take those ideas of all those endorphins and and then you tie them with this fact, this should blow your mind. You should all of a sudden realize, man, this wasn't an accident. God has really made us for visual stories. So 70% of all of our sensory receptors, okay, 70% of them, and that's taste and sight and hearing. But 70% of those receptors are in our eyes. That's crazy. Of the human body, not just visual receptors, 17% of sensory perceptors are in our eyes. And this comes from, I got this directly from the anesthetic surgery journal. And so I got the actual, the volume and date and everything, if you don't believe me, because I just think that's a crazy statistic. 50% of our brain is used in visual processing. And we can get a sense of a visual scene in less than 1/10 of a second. So again, we are not just wired for stories, we're wired visually as well. Now, how do we apply that? How do we make that, how do we use that to our advantage? So this is another one of those mind-blowing things. This was a survey done in 2015, so almost 20 years ago. The Poynter Institute commissioned this research because there are a lot of their photographers, or the National Press Photographers Association are the ones that they asked Poynter Institute to do this survey. And because a lot of their photographers around the world were being released because people were saying, well, we don't need photographers, professional photographers. We've got user-generated content. And so Pointers wanted to see, is that true? Is user-generated content as good as a professional photograph? And so they did this survey with some 200 some odd people, and or I don't know how many it was, but they did something really fascinating. They had a screen come up, and they had a photo on the screen, and they tracked people's eye movements on the screen, and they were able to see where people where their eyes moved on the screen, what they looked at, and how long they looked at it. Okay. And here's what they found out. They found out that the average percentage of times people spent looking at a professional photo was this. 36% of the time were on their faces. 33% of the time, and this makes sense, we're looking at the captions to the photos. And the reason that makes sense is because you spend more time looking at a caption because you're reading it. Then 14% on bodies and 10% on details within the photo. Oh, and then 7% on other things. Now, before I go to this next point, I want to touch back on something because I have skipped some slides here. I forgot to tell you that what they found out in that Pointer survey was that people were able to identify a professionally made photo over user-generated photo 90% of the time. 90% of the time. Okay, now if you add bodies and faces together, people, when they look at a photo, they're looking at the human form for 50% of the time that they're looking at a photo. So what does that tell us? Well, it tells us that basically there's a general principle that the human form trumps everything in an image when it comes to visual interest. And this is born out of that study. And it doesn't matter that that it's the major image in the photo is of a human. If you can take, this is an iPhone photo I took of my daughter, your eyes go directly to her, even though she's out of focus and only partially there and standing behind a waterfall. Okay. The reality is that the human form pulls the viewer in, and you look at the human form first in a photo. And then if you were to say, well, what about like a shot like this? Your eyes first go to the eyes of the subject. So within that photo, the eyes even trump the rest of the body. So the eyes are the first thing to grab your attention. Therefore, it's always important to ensure that the eyes in your images are sharp and in focus. Now, we've already said that you know you look at the human form, you look at the eyes, right? But what about something like on a website? Well, according to this research, that in lieu of another dominant element on a page on a website, viewers' attention even goes to the human form first on a website. So as I put up that picture, your eyes go to the baseball player first, and then it goes to the motorcycle, and then to other places. It's just the way it works. That's the way we've been hardwired. If I put up a series of photos, you know, you're going to look, and I don't know in what order necessarily, but you're going to look at the human form first before you look at the football or the hurricane or the underground or the books. That's just the way it is. And so if we know all the stuff that I'm giving you, okay, if once you understand this and you start applying these as almost rules in the way that you create your stories, your visual stories. And again, when I'm talking about visual stories, I'm talking about newsletters. I'm talking about social media posts. I'm talking about videos. I'm talking about just a photograph as a whole. I'm talking about all those things that I listed earlier. Once you understand these things and you start applying them, you are going to engage your audience much more and be more effective at communicating what it is you want to tell them. If you look at this photo, immediately your eyes go to the mirror. Yet there's a human form in there. There's the man on the bike, and then there's the guy in the corner of the picture that's reflected in the mirror. But your eyes automatically went to the mirror because that's the face, and your eyes are drawn to the eyes first. All right. Now, Pointer's research found that viewers are highly interested in interaction between people. Faces are the initial point of focus, and viewers' attention shift between faces and how subjects interact. So ask yourself, does this photo highlight meaningful interactions or connections between people when you're taking a photo? So test subjects shown greater interest in interaction between people in a photo. People look at the face first and then in the relationships, as we just said. People often look back and forth between faces and see how people are touching or interacting. And so right here, your eyes are drawn specifically to the man there sitting on the floor with his hand out. And then your eyes may bounce back and forth between the man who's turned away, who is a priest, and then going back to the child and then to the others in the picture. But your eyes are locked into that photograph. They're not going to go anywhere else. You're not going to look at the red sash up on the top. You're not going to look at the background until you've been there for some time. And then you start. In fact, you don't even see the lady in the red sari by the checkered, the guy wearing the checkered lungi. You don't even see her for the longest time because you're so fixed on the faces of the people looking back and forth, and your eyes go back and forth, back and forth. Okay. Again, if we look at a photo like this and we think, okay, this is good. We've got people, we got an interaction, we've got a teacher talking here. This is exactly the kind of thing Poynter wants to see in their photos. This is a strong photo. So you have the little boy coming in from the left into the frame and the teacher pointing. And it's obviously there's a classroom going on under a tree somewhere in Africa. And it's a strong photo. Then let me ask you a question. This is where you can unmute your mic. Is this photo more interesting than this photo? So I'm going to put them side by side and you tell me which photo, the photo on the left or the photo on the right, which is more interesting? Somebody, anybody. You can unmute your mic. Just shout it out. The one on the right. Why on the one on the right?
Well, the woman is not just standing by the board, but as a boy with her, show that she's pointing and explaining something to the boy.
Exactly. So that's exactly right. So you've got the lady and the boy interacting, and but there's other stuff going on too. You've got the little boy down here with his hand raised. You had a hand raised in the other one, but it was out of focus and it was lower in the frame. Here, the hand raised is super sharp and in focus. So yeah, and we're going to talk about at the very end of this, we're going to talk about prescription and description. And the idea of what I'm giving you is a prescribed way to take a photo, but what you're going to end up with is a descriptive ability to be able to describe a photo and to be able to look at it. And if you had these two photos sitting on your phone, you would look at them and start describing to yourself, descriptively, describing to yourself what is good in this photo. And so you would say to the one on the right, well, it's the lady's there. She's got a smile and I can see the board and everything and the kid's raising his hand. And then you look to the one on the right and you say, okay, what's good about this? Well, there's the lady, she's interacting with the kids, you're pointing to the board, and it's obviously she's pointing towards an empty spot. So what's the number that goes there? Number 9. Okay. And then you have the little boy raising the hand or little girl raising the hand. Okay. This is obviously a stronger. So this is what you're going to process through. You don't just take a photo because it's pretty. You take a photo because it's communicating something. It's interacting. And so here's an interaction between 3 people. At first, you might have thought it's just 2 people because the girl kissing the little girl kissing the grandmother is so engaging that you almost not see the mother, but you do. And there she is, the mother on the right, the grandmother, and the little grandchild there. And this is in Ethiopia, and they're roasting coffee right there. And it's just this beautiful little scene, and it pulls you in. And so this takes us actually to the next thing that that you need to be aware of, and that is emotion. According to the study, emotion is a key factor in making a photo engaging. Okay, whether it's a smile, laughter, or tears, emotion pulls the viewer into the image. Choose images that stir an emotional response and ask, what emotion does this photo evoke in my audience? Everyone loves a smile. Okay. And what happens is when you see a picture like this, if I was to had you all open your cameras up, I could tell that you'd be smiling, because I can see Amy smiling right now. You're all smiling. I know you are. And what's happening here? Well, mirroring is happening. This is what we talked about earlier, right? This is that release of these endorphins that are causing you to mirror, you feel what the subject feels. Now, you're not putting yourself in this story, but you're letting the story touch you and affect you. And this is exactly, and this is why a lot of people, we've known this for years, and for the years past, what we used to do, like if you look at World Vision or World Hunger Relief, some of these in the early days, what they would do is they would put sad pictures of little children with flies on their faces, and and starving kids, and they would try to generate an emotional response, and it worked. But the problem was, the emotional response was, I don't want to look at this, and so they would turn the page. It wasn't engaging. It engaged, but only with the wrong result. It turned them off. And that's where you have to be careful of your emotions within your photos. You can engage someone with strong emotions, but have it repulse them, not pull them in. And you don't want that. You want to pull them in, unless that, I mean, you can use repulsive images, but you have to know very, very, you have to be very, very careful how you use it. You have to know what the response is going to be and plan for that. Again, here's another iPhone photo. So don't think that all this is done with some fancy camera gear. Okay. It has to do with your skills and your levels. I was standing in Nizamuddin in Delhi, and I was looking over this is a Sufi shrine in Delhi. It's like the second most important Sufi shrine in India. And I was standing there, and this lady grabbed my pant leg, and pulled it, and looked at me and said, "Take my picture." And I was like, "Okay, sure." I'm always up for, especially in digital era, I'm always up for taking people's pictures. Most people say that, would you take my picture? In the old days, when it was film, I wouldn't do it because I didn't want to spend the money on the film. But now digital is free. So I take everybody's picture, and then I can always delete it later, because you never know what you get, like this. And so I took her picture from standing up, and as I was standing up and taking her picture, she raises her hands up and starts praying. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is an incredible opportunity. And so I squatted down and got eye level with her, and took this with my old iPhone 6, I think it was, or maybe a 4, and took this photo. And this is really one of my favorite photos. And it was taken with an iPhone. But it's because of the emotion. You can see her intensity in worship. And you would use this to describe Sufism and Islam, and how help people understand when you're communicating in missions about the unengaged and unreached and how the vast majority of Muslims live in the 1040 window and so on and so forth. So pictures like this engage. Don't always get the pictures of butts up. You know what I'm talking about? When it comes to Muslims, it's the picture of everybody praying and their butts up in the air. And it's usually taken from behind because the person doesn't want to be in the front of people praying. And so you see this picture all over the place, you know, or you see a picture of a mosque in a city or a minaret. Those are fine. But if you can get a picture of someone actually praying and that he's emoting, you know, a feeling, that's what you want. That's how you're going to engage with your audience. Tears, sadness can be a huge visual draw. You have to be careful with it, but if it's engaging, you can do it. This was a lady who, and don't always think that you're intruding when you take the photo. So this lady was in Malaysia, Indian lady in Malaysia, and I was part of I was working for a organization that was doing HIV education, and we were talking to her, and she started crying, and I stopped taking pictures, and she literally asked me, "Why did you stop?" And it's like, "Because you're crying." And she's like, she goes, "Well, I want people to know the pain that I'm in." It's like, oh, okay. So I started taking pictures again. Don't think that something personal doesn't mean that people don't want you to share it. Ask afterwards if you can keep the photo, but also be respectful. And that's super important, is be respectful. Sometimes you get emotion that is so strong, but it isn't necessarily the emotion you thought it was. This lady was more bored than anything, but she has this beautiful pensive look, like she's thinking through her life and what's the future. And this is a great photo to use when we talk about the unengaged and unreached Indian Hindus of India. And she's sitting on a bag of turnips. You know, it's just this beautiful, well-lit shot. But it has emotion. And yet, honestly, when I took it, she was more bored than anything else. But it communicates. You know, the world doesn't need to know she was bored. You can just talk about the unengaged Hindus of India, and people will assume that she's wondering about her future. She's not sure about her own faith and whatever. So you let the photo talk for itself. Don't be afraid to get in front when you're at an event. This was Ivasu meeting in Ethiopia, and they were having a worship session, and they were calling people to be mobilized, and this brother was praying, and he was so intense that I just had to get his photo. And so I stood up and just started taking his photo, and it's the intensity is just incredible. And so these are photos that you can use to talk about God moving in the young people of Africa. They communicate, they emote. Okay, now I'm sure all of you, or maybe not all of you, but many of you heard about this thing called the rule of thirds. How are we doing on time, Amy? We got another.
Yeah, we've got about 30 minutes or so.
Okay.
Yeah, got 30 minutes. Or yeah, that's fine.
So yeah, clock says we've been for an hour and 39 minutes. Okay. We'll wind up here in a minute, and then we can use this to open up questions, and people can ask questions. So we've all heard about this. This is the rule of thirds, or maybe not all of you, many of you heard about it. The rule of thirds is pretty simple. It's basically, it is where you break up a frame into 9 parts, and it gives you these places where they, where they intersect, are called PowerPoints. And they're areas where the human eye are drawn at any given time or on the frame. So what you want to do is you want to try to compose your image with your subject at or near one of these PowerPoints. So as in this image, note that the boy is it's not the boy, that's a man, but note that the man is on one of the line of the two PowerPoints on the right side, and then so these are the PowerPoints right there. So if you start composing your picture using your phone has grid lines on your phones, and I'm going to show you how to turn those on in a second. So you can use that grid line exactly. That's what it's for, is to help you compose for like the rule of third. So here you see another use where the man is sitting right there on the PowerPoint right there. Again, right there on the third line. Look where his eyes are. Well, his head and his eyes are just above the line. This is in Cairo. See the man exactly on the third line right here. Lady on the third line walking into a mosque. Okay, so here we go. Let's see. I wish there was a way to make sure. I don't think. Tell me if you hear the audio. I don't think I turned the audio on, but let's try it, okay?
You need to open this camera application.
Here, okay.
Next, you have to simply go for the settings. Right now, just scroll down and enable grid lines. They appears right here. Take a look. Right now, we can find grid lines on the screen. And that's all for this video. If you find it helpful, remember to look.
Okay, then if you have an iPhone, here's just how you turn it.
So by opening the settings app, you can then scroll down and select the camera option. And then you can scroll down and tap the button to the right of grid in the composition section. I've just turned this on. So if you go back and you open the camera app, you'll see that there is a grid pattern that's appearing on the viewfinder, which can be helpful in framing shots and making sure that the elements in your pictures are centered properly in the image.
All right, so that's how you turn on grid lines on your camera and use it. So if you're let's say you're taking a photo of this guy. Okay, he's standing right there, and there's your phone. I'm going to use an iPhone here. I'm going to center him on that grid line just like that, and then take the picture, and there's the picture I get. You see? All right, so here's this guy. I'm going to want to take his picture. I center him on that grid line. I take the picture, and there you go. All right, this one was already done, but let's say if we were to take a vertical shot, what would it look like? Well, you'd move it over, and then you'd take it. All right. So in closing, let me just go to this, and this is the aspect of what this does. When you use the grid lines and you use the rule of thirds, you often get what we call negative space. And negative space is extremely useful. Negative space refers to the area around the main subject of an image that is intentionally left empty or unoccupied. All right. The negative space can be used as a compositional technique to draw the viewer's attention to the main subject by providing a visual contrast and framing the subject with the image. So let me help you understand that. So the use of negative space can help create a sense of balance. It also creates simplicity and focus with the image by eliminating distracting elements and providing a clear focus point. Okay. Negative space can allow the viewer to appreciate the main subject without their attention wandering around the frame. All right. So like on this image right here, you see super clean image. But let's look at something like this. So here, I'm going to try to explain it this way. Okay. All of this nothingness of the negative space is interrupted by the something of the subject. So your eyes go straight to the subject. So the absence of the distracting elements allow the negative space to guide the viewer towards the subject, creating a really strong and visual impact. All right. So are you following all that? In other words, and this is the part that gets sort of complicated, it's the nothingness that releases your eyes to travel to the subject. So as you look at this picture, it's the white negative space allows that beautiful nothingness of the white is uninterrupted until you get to the boat, and then the boat and the children fishing interrupt it. And then your eyes are pulled directly to them. There's nothing to take you away. And by the way, look at the way that's framed using that. Okay. Same thing happens here. It's that nothingness that allows that. So if we keep looking at these, you can see that over and over again. Now, I'm going to show you what you can do with negative space. And this is super important for you. All right. And then we're going to end right here. Negative space isn't only used for composition, weight, and balance. It has a practical use as well. And I'm using it as I'm showing you this. By leaving areas of the image uncluttered, it creates a clean spot where text can be easily added without competing with visual elements. You see, I use the negative space to show you how it's used. So we have an image like this. Look at all that negative space. So put it on an iPad and your text goes here, or a presentation and your text goes here. So use negative space, and we are going to stop with this beautiful little girl, and we're open up for questions. By the way, the last little thing, we were almost done, but let me just end it with this here. It's challenging to remember all this. I understand that. And you'll have the video to go back to and to refer to. Okay. But basically what I've been giving you has been prescriptive. It's been a prescribed way to photograph, and this isn't just photographs. This works for video as well. Everything that I've told you today is video as well. So it's just that I'm primarily a stills photographer. So I tend to go that way, but I do video and I use all of this in video. Okay. Now, but it's hard to remember all this. All right. But once you look at the video and you've learned these few little principles, you'll learn to recognize these elements in your photo. And as you improve, you'll start seeing them before you shoot. So right now, prescriptive means that we're defining what should be, okay, versus descriptive, which is an observation of what is. So if we think of prescripting is like you getting out to the field with your camera in hand or your phone in hand, you're thinking, what did Matt say about rule of thirds? What was that? What did he say about negative space? I'm confused. I don't remember. Okay, that's fine. Or better still, you do remember, but you didn't do it when you were out there. Okay, so you're out in the field, you're trying to remember, you remember negative space, you remember rule of thirds, but you forgot about this, or you forgot about that. And so what happens is now you get back and you look at your images and you look at all your images, and then you start using descriptive. And this is where this is super helpful. Descriptive is an observation of what is. In other words, once you've shot your image, you return to the image and you look through them and apply these compositional elements to each image. Then you determine which of your images is best. So you look at the image and you go, okay, let's look at this one. So do we have the rule of thirds? Yep. There's the rule of thirds. Okay. There's the human form. Yep. Okay. We didn't talk about this, but there's leading lines. Okay. And there's negative space. There you go. Okay. So that's a pretty good image. So maybe I'll use that image. Okay. If you look here, and we go, okay, does it got the rule of thirds? All right, let's see. Does it use rule of thirds? Well, it does, but it's not strong, but okay, it works. What about negative space? It's definitely got some, yeah. Human form, well, definitely that guy stands out because he's looking right straight in there. And then we didn't talk about this, but bold colors, definitely. So then, if you're on your phone, you'll look at your phone, you go, okay, I took these series of pictures. I like that one. I like that one. I like that one. And then you compare the ones you like. And then you say, okay, out of those, I'm going to pick this one because I've gone through this descriptive process and that's the photo that I'm going to use. Okay. All right. That's going to be it. I hope that this has been helpful. Again, if you, let's see here. How do I get out of this? Okay. If ever you need me to come and do the 3-day workshop, which won't be nearly as rushed and cover a whole lot more, you let me know and we'll try to work that out for you. My name and address is with Amy. Feel free to have her pass it on to you. Let's open it up for questions. And I know we don't have a whole lot of time left, but it's already gone well over 2 hours. So any questions for those that are left?
Finney asked, is there a specific reason it is called negative space? The word negative doesn't generate endorphins.
That's good. Well, because it literally has nothing in it, and therefore it's negative. It isn't a positive space, but positive would mean that there are things in it. But it was not described for storytelling. It was described as a literal definition. I mean, I didn't make up the name, so I'm assuming that's the reason why. But that's a good catch.
Thank you. Can I ask Amy?
Yes, please go ahead, Sylvia.
Thank you very much, Matt. This has been so helpful. I have been doing presentations and sometimes I depend on AI photos. I wonder what you'd say about that. Again, because sometimes you don't have the gadget to take good photos. So what would be your comment on that? And if you're doing like an article, now that photos have power, what would you recommend? If you put in, would you say more photos than content, or just one photo and then a story with, what's the balance between the photo and the text?
That's a great question. Especially if you're talking like a newsletter or something. I actually have a slide. I don't have it on this deck that shows a newsletter that I had gotten, and I actually had to ask him if I could use it from a friend who's a missionary, and it was 6 pages of text. 6 pages of text. And he had 1 photo on the, and I told him, no one's going to read that. No one's going to do it unless they're like super. I don't even think my mom would have read 6 pages of my newsletter. So the reality is you have to balance it. What I do is let me see if I can show you real quick. What I do is I try to balance a photo with each sort of topic. And so if you're, I'm pulling it up right now. Let's say that you are running a general newsletter and you want to tell people about what you did the last 3 months. I don't know how often, you do that, but you would break up your letter into topics, right? Into what I did this time, what I did this, or this event versus that event. And so here we go. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again, because that's a super important question. I don't see the share screen. I don't see the share button. Oh, there it is. It was hidden. All right. Okay, so this is my personal newsletter. Okay, and this is in I use MailChimp. So I have my header at the top, and I put my photo with my wife there. And I do that because I want people to know who it's from. Yes, it says my name, and I have a cute little name and everything. And I have my organizational name. It's important that you link your identity with your organization, because your organization gives you credibility. Unless you are your organization gives you credibility. All right, then if this was a report on an event we did in Prague, and so I had everybody's group picture. That's the big one there, and I pointed myself out in the photo in the caption, but it didn't have to be. I could have said something about the group and who we were. Then I have about 4 paragraphs, short paragraphs. That's the thing, and it's a story. But it's also information. And we talk about that. Then we've just finished working on a video documentary that has been 2 years in the making. And so I talk about a visual milestone, talking about that. And then I put a picture I did a screenshot of the video, and that's the next segment, you see? And then the next header is one of my supporters and an elder at my church taught at this seminar in Prague, and I put his picture in there. By the way, the reason I used this, even though it seems like it's unrelated to Prague, was that we premiered the video in Prague, and so this was basic information about Prague, the event, what the event was about. This is what we did at the event. This is who talked at the event. And it's him doing something. It's engaging with people. This one, not so much. It's just a portrait. And this is a portrait. So I wouldn't say these are ultra strong images, and keep the letter short. One of the things that I see happen so often, and I have a friend who just sent me his newsletter from India, and his letter was 3 or 4 pages of like probably a 10 to 11 point font, and it was just too long. Make 2 letters, send them out 1 week after another. Don't send that letter out all at once in one time. Yeah. So does that answer your question? I'm trying to see if I have another example or anything.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Maybe a comment on the AI. Would you recommend using AI generated photos?
No. It all depends on how you use it. Because right now, well, two reasons. Let me exit this. There's exit. How do I get out of this? Can you stop my sharing? I don't know how to do. Oh, there it is. Stop sharing. There it is. So that's another really good question, because everybody is going with AI generated photos these days. Here's why I say don't do it. I would say don't do it because right now, unless you told people in your photo that it was AI generated, then people might perceive that you are lying, or that you are trying to pull the wool over their eyes. Missions is fighting not just relevancy, but it's fighting integrity for years. There are places, and you know them, and I know there's people from India here, but when I lived in India, I heard stories of mass conversions, and when you go to check it out, it didn't happen. And so people are competing for funds. Okay. But that doesn't mean that we lose our integrity of who we are. And the integrity is directly linked with our relationship with Christ. And if we think we have to blow up stats or make up stories that aren't true, then what we're saying is God is not capable of doing something. And it shows the fact that we really aren't trusting God for who he is. So, but going back to the idea of right now, if I create a AI generated photo and put it in my newsletter, number one, they're not that good right now. Like if you ever try to see an AI generated photo of hands, they're terrible. You can always tell an AI generated photo if you find their people's hands, because they'll have 6 fingers or they'll have weird things. But going back to the other thing, now what I have done, and I do it on a lot of photos in presentations, is I will take a photo that I have and I will crop it to like I do a lot of my presentations like today in 16:9. Okay. And so what I'll do is I will take the photo that is a 4:6 formatted photo, and I will add not content, but add background to the image, so that I can lay text over it. So I try to shoot a lot in the rule of thirds thing, because I use a lot of images with text, as you saw in this whole thing. But there are times when I have to add to the background so that I can lay text, because I don't like white borders and stuff on my screenshots. I could, if we had time, I could show you how to do that. It's super simple in Photoshop, but that would be the only way that I would use AI generated photos, would just be adding or taking out something like maybe a distracting element of some sort, telephone lines or trash or something. But be careful. I only say this to you because you're not photojournalist. If you're a photojournalist, you could be fired for using AI like that, but you're not. So, but just think about that. Why would a photojournalist be fired for using AI? And then you think, okay, does that mean a photojournalist has more integrity than a Christian missionary? Okay, good. Any other questions?
Amazing.
Thank you, Mike.
There's one question, Raul, if you're still on, if you want to ask your question that you put in the chat. Is he still here? Yeah, he's still here.
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, thanks, Matt, for that session. How do you ensure that you are telling someone's story with them rather than about them? And how can we ensure authenticity in our digital stories? That's my.
What was the last part? Part two? I got the first part.
Yeah, how do we ensure authenticity in our digital storytelling?
Well, authenticity is ensured by being authentic. I mean, that just means honesty, right? If you're honest, you're authentic. When you start telling a story and you start inflating numbers, or you start changing pertinent details. Now, there's difference there. You can leave things out of a story, and even out of a photograph. But there's difference between leaving things out and purposely putting other things in, and that's where you have to be careful. So, but as far as the you were asking about, how did you phrase that? The question again?
Yeah, so how do you tell someone's story with them rather than it being about them? Like, that's the temptation. Like, we take the limelight a lot of times when we are telling stories about people. We become the hero in that story, and how can we avoid that? Yeah.
Well, I think the easiest answer to that is intentionality. And that's exactly what you just said. Are you putting yourself as the protagonist in the story? Are you making yourself the center of the story? If the story is about you, then that's appropriate. If the story isn't about you and it's about Rakesh or somebody, then make it about Rakesh. But one of the things you want to make sure you do when you're doing these stories is, let's say that you're doing a story on a Muslim background believing pastor of a home church in someplace, okay? And you want to do his story. So the question would be, do you have permission to use their likeness in the story? Do you have permission to use their name? And you know, don't make assumptions that you do. In fact, I would assume that you don't. Given my many years of working among Muslims, I know that it would be inappropriate to, it would be like calling out this pastor publicly. And remember, this is the other thing you gotta understand, is that social media these days isn't, I give my brother a hard time. Okay, here's why. My brother is on Facebook. My brother's 75 years old. And he thinks that the only people that see his posts are his friends. And so he's posting about going to the doctor, or he's posting about his carbuncles, or he's posting about things. And I'm like, Dave, stop. Really, you're killing me here. Don't post all of the things that are wrong with you, because, you know, all of my friends are seeing this. And, you know, it's like, because what happens is, this is the whole idea of social media, is that you don't, the people that see your post aren't always just your friends. It's the friends of friends. It's the friends of friends of friends. And so so don't assume that if you're sending out a newsletter electronically or a social media post or even a video, that only subscribers to your posts are going to see that post. I would just make the assumption that it's going to, even though it probably won't, but make the assumption that it might go viral. And if it went viral, so let me tell you a quick story. And this is why I asked Amy where this is going to be posted, because there's some security issues for me as well. So years ago, my wife and I did a drama, and we portrayed a Muslim couple, and we did this drama in front of 18,000 people at Urbana back in 1993. And it was quite interesting because we didn't tell them it was a drama. We just got up, and my wife pretended to be a Muslim from the Philippines. My wife is Filipina, and I pretended to be a Muslim man. And I went through and I told them how what is wrong. I told them about the similarities between Christianity and Islam, which was great, and I sucked them all in. And then I turned the tide, and I went through and I used Ahmed Deedat, who is a apologist for Islam. I used a lot of his stuff, and I went in and I started tearing apart the Islamic. Well, I started tearing apart the Christianity from a Muslim point of view, using the arguments that this Ahmed Deedat did. And then I come out of character and I take off my hat, and I had makeup on, so I was all white up here, and I said, "My name is Matt Brandon, and I'm a missionary with Frontiers." And this is exactly why, Amy, I don't want this public. But I said I was a missionary with Frontiers, and at the time we were working in India, and that was later, that DVD of that session was sold, and Frontiers used to use it as a recruiting tool. It was quite effective. And we've since then, over the years, we've had a lot of people say, "Hey, your drama that you did motivated us to go to the mission field." It's like, "Oh, this is wonderful. Love that." Okay. Then we're in Malaysia. 10 years later, 15 years later, we're in Malaysia, living in Malaysia, working. And my wife is trying to run a small business importing Indian clothing from India. And this lady writes, and she goes, "I'm sorry, I only work with missionaries." And then my wife said, "Oh, okay." And she didn't, well, it was something like that. But anyway, but the lady came back, she goes, "Oh, I realized that you're okay. I can work with you." And my wife's like, "Well, how would you know that we were missionaries?" She goes, "Oh, I saw your video online." I was like, "What?" And so we Googled her name, and it came up. No, it wasn't even my name. It was her name. We Googled her name, and it came up on YouTube, and there was the video, and it was the whole thing. And it was me coming out of character, saying my name and everything. And you got to understand, this was done in 1993. Okay. In 1993, I'm not the same person I was. The world is not the same it was in 1993. We as Christians, even in missions, we didn't use terms the way we use nowadays. I would never say to someone, "Be angry at Islam because of the lies," or whatever. I would never use that term these days. I would say that, and I would talk confidentially, but when I'm talking in a public forum, I wouldn't say things like that. But I did in those days. So I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, this is bad." So we tried to get it down. We tried to get, the guy wouldn't take it down. Finally, the only way, we eventually got it taken down after about 3 weeks. And I just knew it was going to go viral, and I was going to be kicked out of Malaysia. I was going to be banned from going to India, all these things, and maybe even hunted down and attacked and beat up or whatever, because of the things that I said about Islam. And but what happened was, eventually they got taken down because Urbana, who owned the rights to the video, claimed copyright violation, and so they fortunately, the guy had left this the Urbana copyright sign on the end of the video on it. But all I'm saying with that is assume that you never know what's going to happen for your picture or your video or your story. If you put it out on the internet, the whole world will see it. So if it's a pastor and he's a Muslim background or something like that, be aware that you could be outing him. You could put his life in danger. So make sure you have permission. That was a long ways around just to say, make sure you get permission. But anyway, we still have people coming to this thing. It's crazy. All right. Anything else? Sorry for that rant. But it's
No, that was important. I think that we've had conversations among Lausanne staff and just, I mean, I've had conversations with different people throughout WildGen and just trying to remember to be safe online and to, what is posted and what is not posted and things like that. And so we always, actually, I forgot to say it, but usually at the beginning of the webinar, I say, we're recording. So if there's a security concern, change your name, that kind of stuff. And so we try to take care. And so it is true. Cause I mean, you can be, in my context, I'm in America right now, but up until I landed here last week, I have VPNs, we're very vague online with what we post, just for security purposes. So,
I mean, what you want to do individually with your people and how you portray yourself within your country, that's up to you. And honestly, Raul, I'm assuming you're from India. You're not going to get kicked out of India, right? But you could get your family and your finances docked. India is very, very strict these days with like foreign financing and things like that. And you could get people in trouble, things like that. So just, be advised. I'm going to quickly share this. This is a thing that I do, is that first of all, I asked, do I have their permission to use their likeness? Okay. And this was a actual pastor of Muslim background in Ethiopia. And oddly enough, I actually have his permission, but I chose to use it that way. So ask yourself, can you tell their story? Do you have their permission? That's the first thing you need to ask. Okay. So let's say this is a hypothetical person. This guy is not Mr. Lee Chua in Penang, but let's say his name is Mr. Lee Chua. And do I have Mr. Lee's permission to use his story and his image? So we have to ask those questions. Can we use both of those things? But now let's say that we also need, can I use your name? So you ask, can I use your story? Can I use your image? Can I use your name? Now let's say he says, no, I don't want you to use my name. You can use my story but you can't use my name. And so maybe change your name to some other name that's not ethnically the same. And I use that specifically, not ethnically the same. In other words, if he's a Chinese man, I don't call him Mr. Li Wang or Mr. Whatever. I go for something like Bob Jones. Why? Because there might be another Muhammad or Lee Chua or another, whatever hypothetical name you made up in that same community, and they could be mistaken for this person, and you're going to get, and they may not even be a Christian or whatever, but they could be persecuted as a result. Can you use their location? Maybe not. So if you don't want it, maybe just the country. Just say the country. Oh, and then wait. That's what it was. And if you want to use their image, they say, no, you can't use my image. Then maybe blur their face out like this, or put a bar on it or something. All right. And then ask about their names and everything like that. So that's just it, like that. So there you go. All right. Well, we've now gone 2 hours and 19 minutes.
All right, well, we will wrap up. Matt, if
I'm
you-
fine. It's up to you guys. So,
if you will close us in prayer. Thank you
Sure.
so much for the time. Thank you. I know that we've all, again, like I said before, this is the first time we have gotten anywhere near this subject, and so I've been informed, and I know that everybody else has been encouraged. So thank you for giving of your time and your resources. So if you would just close us in prayer, and then we can all go on for whatever the Lord has planned for the rest of our days.
okay. And I wouldn't, from a selfish standpoint, because I am trying to develop this workshop and get the word out. It would be nice if it has meant something to you, if you feel like you've gotten something out of it, to shoot Amy an email and say something, and I might with your permission, only if you send it to her, I would use it in some sort of my newsletter promotional quote, something like that. This is a fairly new presentation that we're doing, and again, it's usually done over days with practical stuff where we send people out and do stuff. So anyway, all right. So thank you very much. Let's pray. Lord, thank you again for these folks who have given their life to missions, that have heard the call, that are responding to the Great Commission, that have been willing to risk everything for the sake of your glory and for the lives of those around them. Lord, we pray that even if it's just something as simple as the rule of thirds, or how to turn on their grid on their camera, that if they have something they took away from this, that they could apply this and make their newsletters, their social media posts, their short form videos, all this stuff, make them more effective and reaching more people with a message that they have to communicate. And I pray that we can see that those numbers in the 3 billion within the 1040 window reduced in our lifetime. And we ask this in your name. Amen. Thank you.